Okay, so I was in this packed coffee shop yesterday morning. You know the scene, line barely moving.
Who wished?
And the barista, she looks so new, maybe her third day, totally flustered, juggling the espresso machine, the orders.
Yeah, you can picture it. High pressure.
Then the man in front of me just lets out this loud, impatient sigh. Didn't yell, but he leaned right over the counter and said, "It's just a black coffee. How hard can it be?" Voice cut right through the shop buzz. Everyone went quiet.
Oof. You could feel that, I bet.
You could see it. The effect on the barista. It wasn't just embarrassment. She physically recoiled. Shoulders slumped, face pale, hands started shaking.
Wow.
She went from flustered, like rushing, to just frozen, completely shut down.
It's a textbook physiological reaction right there.
Then the guy got his coffee, walked out, probably felt totally justified, like he just voiced an opinion, thought his words were just words.
But they weren't, were they?
Not at all. What he didn't get is that he just made a purely physical transaction. He didn't just act bad, he objectively did bad, on a chemical level.
He flooded her system with cortisol and adrenaline.
Yeah.
The classic stress response.
Exactly. And here's the kicker. He flooded his own system too. Made a huge withdrawal from this, biological bank account he doesn't even know exists.
And in that moment, he became objectively, biologically less successful, less effective.
Yeah, measurably so.
And that moment, that visible, immediate physical reaction of the barista, shoulders slumping, hands shaking, that's exactly the core insight we're digging into today.
Right.
We're taking these concepts we usually think of as subjective, like good, bad, even things like success at work or morality.
And reframing them.
Completely reframing them as quantifiable, objective biological states. We're going deep into material that differentiates between operating in a thrive state,
where you're open, expansive, resourceful.
Precisely, versus being trapped in a chemically restrictive survive state.
So our mission, really, in this deep dive is to kind of shortcut the usual debates, the philosophical arguments about ethics.
Get right past that.
And focus squarely on the biochemical blueprint. We want to understand the objective logic underneath all our interactions.
The chemical transactions that literally dictate how effective you are, how much social capital you build, your long-term well-being, and everyone else is around you.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's get into the hard science behind being human together.
Okay, so let's start with the fundamental premise. The thing that shifts the whole conversation.
Yeah.
Emotions aren't just feelings. They're not subjective fluff.
They're data.
They're data. They are the body's ancient physical system reading the environment, making split-second calls. Is this safe? Are there resources here?
So good and bad aren't opinions.
They're objective biochemical readouts. They signal either thriving a state of safety, abundance, possibility, or survival and threat, a state where you need to restrict, to focus, to defend.
Which makes total evolutionary sense, right? If you feel safe, your body should be like, okay, let's invest long-term, build relationships, learn stuff.
Exactly. Build resources.
Yeah.
But if there's a threat,
shut it down. All hands on deck for the immediate problem. Forget creativity, forget long-term plans.
Precisely. And that thrive state, the resource-building condition, it's defined by a specific chemical cocktail. This cocktail triggers what scientists call the broaden and build function. We've got four main players.
Okay, first one, dopamine, which everyone thinks is the pleasure chemical, but that's too simple, isn't it?
Way too simple. It's much more nuanced. Dopamine is really the go-getter chemical. It's about anticipation and motivation.
So not the reward itself.
Less the reward itself, more the pursuit of the reward. It kicks in when your brain predicts a goal is attainable, that effort is worthwhile. It fuels that drive, that interest, excitement, even pride.
It keeps you going, keeps you invested in the long haul.
That's its job. It activates your seeking circuits. It keeps that broaden and build function humming by making future goals seem valuable.
So the dopamine hit from planning this deep dive might actually be stronger than the feeling when we wrap it up.
Often, yeah. Because once you hit the goal, that dopamine surge often drops off pretty quickly. The system immediately starts looking for the next thing to anticipate. That forward momentum is key.
Okay, chemical number 2, serotonin. This one's linked to confidence, right?
Right. Serotonin is the great regulator of well-being and confidence. Think of it as the all is well signal in the background.
Like a baseline feeling of okayness.
Exactly. A stable sense of serenity, contentment, sort of independent of the immediate ups and downs. But socially, it's critical. It signals that feeling of being respected, valued by your group, secure in your place.
Which you need to feel safe enough to contribute to thrive.
Absolutely fundamental for psychological safety. Proper serotonin levels make you feel secure.
Then there's oxytocin, the bonding chemical.
The connector. This one is huge for trust, for community. It's released with physical touch, sure, but also deep conversation, generosity, feeling like you belong.
The feeling it gives is love, trust.
Love, trust, gratitude, belonging. It lowers our defensiveness, makes us more willing to be a bit vulnerable. And you absolutely need that for real teamwork, real connection.
Makes sense. And the last one of the Thrive bunch, endorphins.
The body's own painkiller. Your internal pharmacy, like you said, released during intense exercise, big laughter. That feeling of joy, maybe even giddiness, masks discomfort.
So when these 4 dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, endorphins are flowing optimally,
your brain literally opens up. You become more creative, more curious. Your perspective broadens. You're biologically primed to build new resources, whether skills or relationships. That is the broaden and build function in action.
Okay, let's flip it. The restrictive state, the survive state. This is where things narrow down chemically.
This is the domain of the body's stress systems. Primarily the HPA axis, that's the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, basically the threat detection and response system.
And when it perceives a threat, like an impatient customer leaning over the counter.
2 core chemicals flood the system. First, adrenaline. That's pure immediate energy, fight or flight fuel. Instant focus, boosts physical capacity, very short-term, very powerful.
But the one that really causes problems long-term is cortisol.
Exactly. Cortisol is the long-acting stress hormone. If the threat sticks around a toxic boss, money worries, feeling constantly disrespected, cortisol keeps you on high alert.
And the function of this system
is to narrow the focus drastically. It shuts down anything deemed non-essential for immediate survival.
Like creativity, long-term thinking.
Gone, or at least severely hampered. Complex problem-solving, abstract thought, even some memory functions get sidelined. All resources are diverted to dealing with the immediate perceived threat. It thinks your life is on the line.
So back to the coffee shop. When that barista froze, her brain literally pulled resources away from making coffee efficiently and poured them into, what, bracing for impact?
That's the biological reality. Self-preservation overrides everything else, which brings us neatly to the objective logic of our actions. Positive sum versus negative sum.
Meaning good actions have a positive chemical outcome for everyone, and bad actions have a negative one.
Precisely. An objectively good action, patience, active listening, offering help, it's biologically self-reinforcing. It signals safety to the receiver.
How does that work chemically in the person receiving the kindness?
That feeling of safety immediately tells their HPA axis to stand down. It suppresses cortisol and adrenaline production, and if the action involves connection, like genuine empathy,
oxytocin gets released.
Oxytocin flows. You've chemically moved them out of survive and nudged them towards thrive. That feeling of safety is the gateway.
And for the giver, the person being patient or helpful.
We get rewarded too. It's hardwired, the helper's high. Successfully helping someone triggers dopamine. That's the reward for doing something socially valuable. And oxytocin, the connection chemical.
So it's a biochemical win-win, a positive sum transaction, reinforces behavior that helps the group.
Exactly. But that man in the coffee shop, he engaged in a negative sum game, a biochemical lose-lose.
How so? We saw the effect on the barista, but how did it hurt him?
Okay, the bad action impatience, yelling, instantly spikes the receiver's cortisol and adrenaline. She tags him as a threat. She's in survive mode. But here's the crucial part. His anger, his impatience, that is a survive state too.
He's running on his own stress chemicals.
Absolutely. Fueled by his own cortisol and adrenaline. That momentary feeling of power or justification he might have gotten, that's just the rush of his own emergency hormones. It's not a sustainable, healthy reward state.
Why is that so costly, though? Why does living on cortisol, being angry or stressed a lot, damage that long-term thrive state?
Because your chemical resources aren't infinite. Chronic high cortisol actively messes with the thrive chemicals. It's known to deplete serotonin over time, which eats away at that background sense of well-being and confidence.
Okay.
And constant stress also dysregulates the dopamine system. That leads to motivation problems, trouble focusing on complex goals, burnout. That guy in the coffee shop was literally undermining his own future effectiveness and happiness just to feel powerful for 10 seconds.
The biological cost of operating in anger in that survive state is way higher than any fleeting payoff.
Way higher. It's just bad biological accounting.
Okay, so if every interaction is basically a chemical transaction, depositing thrive or withdrawing into survive, we can scale this up, right? To whole teams, organizations, communities.
Absolutely. You start seeing things through the lens of the social bank account, where trust and goodwill, what we call social capital, are the actual currency.
And success isn't luck, it's accounting.
It's organizational physics, driven by neurochemistry. Every interaction gets tagged by the brain. Valuable resource or costly threat. A good action, triggering thrive chemistry. That's a deposit. Tags you as a trustworthy ally.
And a bad action, triggering survive chemistry.
That's a withdrawal. Tags you as a threat, a cost. So organizational success becomes, in many ways, the predictable outcome of being a net depositor, accumulating high social capital.
This must be incredibly visible in leadership roles. The leader's behavior basically sets the chemical tone for everyone else.
Hugely. Let's talk about that manager, Rena. Her team was struggling, missing deadlines.
Right. Her style was described as tough but fair. Lots of critique, lots of pressure.
Which sounds fine on paper, maybe. But the chemical result, disaster. Constant critique, even if technically accurate, kept her team locked in survive mode.
Stressed, defensive,
and crucially, their prefrontal cortexes, where creativity and complex problem-solving happen, were chemically offline. The cortisol was shutting down higher functions.
Yeah, I've felt that. When you're constantly braced for criticism, you're not thinking about solutions, you're just trying to protect yourself.
Exactly. They were biologically incapable of accessing the broaden and build capacity they needed to innovate their way out of the deadline mess.
So what changed? Her VP stepped in.
Her VP intervened, but crucially, not with more criticism. He made a calculated deposit, an ovation. He specifically praised Rena for her organizational skills on a past project, framed the current struggles not as failure, but as a temporary setback for a capable person.
Strategic praise. What did that do to Rena chemically?
Triggered a massive thrive state. Relief, first off. Then a rush of pride, that's serotonin. A feeling of connection, being supported, oxytocin. She felt safe and valued again.
And that chemical shift gave her clarity.
It energized her, and she had this aha moment. She realized she'd been doing the exact opposite to her own team, creating the very stress that was blocking them.
So she flipped the script, replicated the deposit with her team.
She did. She publicly acknowledged their long hours, specifically told them they were valued.
No.
And then she reframed the deadline issue, not as, why are you failing, but as, this is a complex puzzle. We need your best unburdened thinking to solve it.
Lowering the threat level.
Instantly. The source material says the defensiveness just dropped. Once that cortisol alarm quieted down, their broaden and build functions came back online.
And someone had an idea.
A junior coder, who'd apparently been too nervous to speak up before, offered a suggestion that completely broke the logjam. It's such clear evidence. Effective leadership is fundamentally about managing the neurochemistry of your team, consciously making those deposits.
And this isn't just anecdotes. There's hard data on this, especially in high-stress fields like medicine. Tell us about that study on medical residents and workplace social capital, or WSC.
Right. The context there is vital. Medical residency is incredibly tough. Huge pressure, risk of burnout, often rigid hierarchies. This study looked at 276 Japanese residents across 32 hospitals.
And they measured their WSC, basically, how much trust and support they felt in their workplace.
Exactly. And then they correlated that with their well-being and their work engagement.
What did the numbers show? Was there really a dose-dependent relationship? More WSC equals better outcomes?
The correlation was stark, yeah. They divided residents into 4 groups, quartiles, based on their WSC scores. Those in the top quartile, the highest trust environments, had significantly better subjective well-being.
How much better?
Their adjusted mean difference was 6.55 points higher than the lowest quartile. Now, 6.55 points might not sound huge, but on these scales, that's a clinically significant difference in how good they felt psychologically, just from being in a higher trust network.
Wow. And what about performance? Work engagement?
Even more dramatic. We're talking dedication, energy, being absorbed in the work. The highest WSC group scored an average of 15.12 points higher on engagement compared to the lowest group.
15 points? That's massive.
It's a profound difference. It really drives home that social capital isn't some soft, fluffy, nice to have. It's a core requirement for getting the best out of people, especially when the work itself is demanding. It dictates whether they operate in thrive or survive.
So what's actually happening? What are the mechanisms? How does WSC chemically boost things like self-efficacy and engagement?
The research points to 3 key ways WSC creates that thrive environment. First, high WSC just makes communication, coordination, collaboration better. Things run smoother.
Less friction, less stress.
Exactly. And this network of positive social feedback directly reinforces each resident's self-efficacy. Their belief that they can actually succeed. Getting helpful feedback, succeeding together, those are regular deposits. They trigger dopamine, motivation for effort, and serotonin confidence.
So it actively fights the isolation and self-doubt that stress feeds on.
Precisely. The second mechanism is informal social control. In high WSC settings, people look out for each other more. Peers and supervisors are more attentive, more invested in fairness and collective success.
Like a self-correcting system for bad behavior?
Sort of, yeah. This peer awareness helps ensure fairness and nips potential problems, injustices, bad treatment in the bud. By reducing those perceived threats, you lower the background hum of chronic stress. Frees up brain power from constant cortisol management. It prevents those negative sum withdrawals before they happen.
Okay, makes sense. And the third mechanism?
It's the supportive network for actually learning and growing. High WSE fosters mentorship, skill sharing, professional development. When the organization, or even just your peers, invest in your growth.
That's a huge deposit. Signals you're valued long-term.
It's the ultimate social deposit, really. Signals commitment, value. That maximizes oxytocin, stabilizes serotonin. People feel safe, valued, and connected. The perfect recipe for thrive.
Okay, so if building social capital and fostering that thrive state is the key to organizational success, then trust isn't just a nice feeling, it's an objective, manageable input.
Exactly. We know high-trust societies have lower transaction costs, higher growth. And we know oxytocin is the brain's signal for this is trustworthy.
So the goal for a manager, a leader, becomes how do we deliberately create a culture that consistently triggers oxytocin release?
And that thinking led to the OXY-TOCIN framework. It's basically a set of 8 specific organizational behaviors, levers you can pull to make regular social deposits. But let's not just list them. Let's get the why behind each one, the neurochemistry.
Good idea. Let's start with ovation, recognition.
But not just any recognition. Ovation needs to be strategic. It should be unexpected, public if appropriate, tangible, and close in time to whatever's being recognized.
Why those specifics? Unexpected, public?
The surprise element maximizes the dopamine hit. The reward prediction error gets a positive jolt. The public aspect reinforces social belonging and status, hitting serotonin and oxytocin. Timing keeps the link clear. It turns good job into a real social and chemical event.
Okay, X is expectation. Setting clear, difficult goals that require teamwork.
This is clever. By setting tough goals that people have to work together to achieve, you're basically engineering positive social interactions.
Forcing the oxytocin triggers.
You're forcing collaboration, trust-building moments. The environment itself necessitates connection, which then chemically reinforces itself. It builds the muscle of working together.
Yield is yield, giving employees autonomy, ownership.
Yield is about trusting people with the how. When a leader says, figure out the best way to do this, I trust you, that act of yielding control is a direct deposit.
Signals confidence.
Big time. Stabilizes serotonin. And then if the project succeeds because of their approach, the dopamine reward is maximized because they truly owned it.
Makes sense. T's transfer. Flexibility job crafting.
Yeah, transfer is about allowing people to shape their work tasks, location, hours where possible. This is a huge signal of reciprocal trust from the organization.
We trust you to get it done, regardless of where or when.
Exactly. We value your output, not just your presence. That freedom inherently lowers background stress, less cortisol, and makes it easier to find those flow states, which are deeply motivating, hitting dopamine again.
Okay. Again, for openness, transparency.
Openness is about killing ambiguity. Being transparent about goals, decisions, even challenges. Why? Because ambiguity and uncertainty are major cortisol triggers.
The brain hates not knowing what's coming.
It wastes massive energy trying to predict threats it can't see. Transparency reduces that chronic stress. And here's key. When cortisol levels drop, then the brain can effectively produce and respond to oxytocin. High stress actively inhibits the trust response. You need openness for oxytocin to even land properly.
Got it. C is caring, building relationships. Seems obvious.
It's about being intentional. Caring means management actively creates opportunities for people to connect as humans, not just colleagues. Team lunches, social events, mentorship pairing.
Designing for connection.
Designing experiences specifically to stimulate oxytocin, deepen those peer bonds. So the team sees each other as allies, not just competitors for resources.
Is invest. Investing in employee growth.
Funding professional development, personal growth opportunities. This signals the organization sees the employee as a long-term asset, not just a cog in the machine.
Another major deposit.
Huge deposit. Triggers oxytocin, long-term safety, belonging, and stabilizes serotonin. feeling valued, leads directly to better retention because people feel secure and committed to.
And finally, and natural, leaders being authentic.
This is the foundation. Natural means leaders have to walk the talk. They need to genuinely model all these trustworthy, oxytocin-triggering behaviors themselves.
Because if the leader preaches trust but acts sketchy,
the whole system crumbles. Hypocrisy is toxic to trust. When leaders are authentic and trustworthy, it creates a ripple effect. Employees mirror it, and the high-trust culture reinforces itself chemically.
Now, there's another piece here beyond just these behaviors, purpose. It's not just how we work together, but why.
Exactly. Purpose, especially a transcendent purpose, like genuinely aiming to improve the lives of customers or employees, not just hitting revenue targets, acts as a powerful chemical stabilizer.
How does purpose affect our chemistry?
Research suggests that working on something you believe has meaning actually reduces physiological arousal, that stress response. It seems to engage the same anti-stress pathways as oxytocin. Purpose makes effort feel worthwhile.
Connects to dopamine too, long-term motivation.
Definitely. And it helps buffer against the chronic stress that leads to burnout. Purpose and trust work together. Trust makes it safe to strive, and purpose makes the striving meaningful.
The numbers on the return on investment for building this kind of high-trust, high-purpose culture, they're pretty staggering, right? This isn't just about nice places to work.
Not at all. The data is compelling. High correlation between trust and purpose and actual productivity gains measured by things like employee vigor and self-reported effort.
And the link to joy.
Astonishing.
Yeah.
Trust and purpose together had a 0.80 correlation with reported joy at work. That means those two factors explained about 80% of why people feel joy in their jobs. That's huge.
And it translates to the bottom line. The source material mentioned higher wages.
Significantly higher. High-trust organizations paid employees between 10.3% and 11.6% more than companies in the lower trust tiers.
Wow.
It's not charity. The analysis suggests it's because productivity is genuinely higher, and operational costs are lower, fewer errors, less conflict, faster decisions, lower turnover. High trust creates value that justifies paying people more. It aligns everyone's incentives.
And what about the direct impact on stress? Did the data show trust reducing that toxic cortisol effect?
Profoundly. Moving from the lowest trust level to the highest was associated with a 34.5% reduction in chronic stress.
34%.
Yeah. And high trust also reduced depersonalization, that feeling of being cynical or detached from your work. Plus, the health impact. People in high trust companies took 8.5 fewer sick days per year than those in average trust companies.
That's real measurable value flowing directly from managing the chemical environment.
Absolutely. Yeah. Even a 10% bump in trust correlated with a 4.5% rise in job satisfaction and a 5% rise in joy.
Okay, strong correlations.
Yeah.
But could they prove causation? Could they show that actively changing one of these OXytocin factors causes trust and retention to go up?
They did. Through what they called a natural intervention at an online retailer, let's call it OnRat, they were having trouble with high turnover.
Okay.
They measured all the OXytocin factors and found their weakest link was natural leaders weren't perceived as authentic or consistent. So they designed a specific 3-month microlearning program targeting authentic leadership behaviors, little nudges and training.
They tried to teach leaders to be more natural. Did it work?
It did. They measurably increased the natural score by 15.6%. And that specific intentional change caused overall trust across the organization to increase by nearly 6%.
Wow. Direct cause and effect.
And crucially, after the intervention, both the improved natural score and the resulting higher trust score were independently linked to lower turnover, better job retention.
So they nailed it down. You can measure these behaviors, manage them, and demonstrably improve trust and performance by consciously making deposits in that social bank account.
That's the evidence. Leadership behaviors are manageable inputs with predictable chemical and organizational outputs.
So if we really accept this, that good and bad have objective, measurable, biological consequences, the implications just ripple outwards, don't they? Way beyond just workplace success. We're talking ethics, design, even how we build our cities.
It fundamentally reframes responsibility. Take that anecdote about the AI development team. They were designing how an AI assistant should respond when it fails, when it doesn't understand the user.
Right. And the debate was between like a blunt error message, red text, input not recognized, versus something softer.
And the interesting argument came from the ethicist on the team. They argued the blunt error was objectively bad, not just because it felt rude, but because of its chemical outcome.
What was the chemical argument?
A blunt, unexpected error message triggers an instant cortisol spike in the user, puts them into a mini-survive state. makes them feel stressed, maybe a bit stupid.
And in that state,
Their focus narrows. They're less likely to calmly figure out the problem, less likely to re-engage creatively. The design itself was making it harder for them to succeed by triggering a stress response.
whereas the softer alternative, something like, I'm not quite following you, could we try breaking that down, acts like a built-in social deposit.
Exactly. It keeps the user in a relative thrive state. It implies collaboration. We have a problem to solve together. It subtly triggers oxytocin vibes, keeping those broaden and build functions online.
So the ethical duty of a designer becomes managing the physiological state they induce in the user.
That's the implication. Whether you're designing software, AI, a physical space, a process, you have a responsibility for the chemical transactions you're creating. Are you building for thrive or triggering survive?
Okay, but this whole idea good is just optimal chemistry that runs headlong into centuries of moral philosophy, doesn't it? Is our deep sense that some things are truly right and wrong just an illusion created by our biology.
That's precisely the argument from sociobiologists like Roos and Wilson. They argue that our ethics evolved through epigenetic rules, basically, gene-culture interactions, predispositions shaped by natural selection.
Meaning ancestors who felt cooperation was good and murder was bad survived better.
And passed on those predispositions. So Roos and Wilson would say our powerful feeling that morality is objective and external is actually an illusion, a very useful illusion, mind you.
Useful.
It helps us legitimize our moral codes, enforce cooperation, build stable societies. It makes us believe our biologically ingrained rules are absolute truths, which makes us follow them more strongly. But ultimately, they argue, it's relative to our species' survival needs.
So we feel murder is profoundly wrong because that feeling helped Homo sapiens thrive, not because of some universal law.
That's the biological illusion argument. It's a tool evolved for social cohesion, not necessarily an objective feature of the universe like gravity. However, the material we looked at also offers a fascinating counter-argument, a defense of moral objectivity.
How do they defend it?
By drawing an analogy to systems we generally do accept as objective, like mathematics.
Okay.
It's called a contradiction analogy.
Math and morals, how do they connect?
Through the principle of logical coherence. Think about arithmetic.
Yeah.
If you introduce just one self-contradictory axiom, like stating that 0 equals 1, the whole system collapses.
Right, you can prove anything equals anything. It becomes meaningless.
Because it contains an internal contradiction. The system breaks. The argument is that moral systems work similarly. They might have different starting points, different axioms across cultures, but they cannot be entirely arbitrary because they're also constrained by logical coherence.
Meaning a moral system can't contradict itself either.
Exactly. If you introduce a self-contradictory moral axiom, say, action X is morally wrong, and D, it's also morally neutral, the system becomes unworkable. If stealing 1 apple is wrong but also neutral, how do you judge stealing 2 or 10? It creates logical chaos.
So the fact that a blatant contradiction breaks a moral system suggests there's some underlying non-arbitrary structure. It can't just be anything goes.
That's the core idea. The need for internal consistency puts a constraint on arbitrariness. It suggests moral systems aren't pure illusion. They have to adhere to some kind of logical framework to function at all, much like math or logic. It's a really thought-provoking defense of a form of objectivity.
Definitely raises the stakes. Okay, let's shift to our final area where this objective biology plays out. The environment itself. Beyond human interactions. The calm and connection theory.
Yeah, this extends the idea of chemical regulation to our relationship with nature. The theory suggests that natural environments, especially ones we perceive as safe and positive biophilia, our innate pull towards nature, can act as powerful triggers for the thrive state.
How? What's the chemical?
It's hypothesized to be oxytocin again. That nature itself, when it feels safe and restorative, can stimulate oxytocin release, which then mediates many of the anti-stress and health benefits we get from being outdoors.
Why oxytocin specifically?
Because oxytocin acts like a physiological brake on the stress system. Its release dials down the HPA axis, suppresses cortisol. By signaling safety and connection, even connection to the place itself, it frees up bodily resources for restoration, like boosting immune function or digestion.
And this chemical calm enables something called instauration, which is more than just relaxing, right?
Much more. Instauration is nature's ability to help us psychologically reorient ourselves. When fear is absent, when oxytocin has quieted the stress system, our cognitive space opens up.
Allows for deeper processing.
Allows for accelerated crisis processing. It helps rebuild what's called a person's scope of meaning. In that calm, open state, you can revisit difficult experiences, even trauma, and potentially transform the emotional links. Change them from triggering stress to being integrated in a calmer way. Nature chemically creates the conditions needed to process deep stress.
Which loops back perfectly to that urban planning example, the co-living district deliberately designed to lower background cortisol.
Exactly. That neighborhood was like a living experiment in applying this chemistry. Engineered for low background stress and constant low-stakes oxytocin, hits shared gardens, shared tools, spaces forcing interaction.
Building up massive social capital through design.
Relentless social deposits. So when a crisis hit the power outage, their default wasn't panic or the usual survive response. Their high-trust, oxytocin-rich environment kicked in.
They went straight to thrive mode, collaboratively.
Immediately. They worked together, shared resources, turned a potential disaster into a bonding experience. The environment was physically designed to make the good, collaborative, thrive outcome the path of least chemical resistance. It shows you can engineer spaces for better biological outcomes. Hashtag outro.
So when you pull it all together, this deep dive really reveals something fundamental. Success in human society, whether you're leading a team, designing a product, being a neighbor, or even just managing your own reactions, it's not really about subjective feelings or luck or even just philosophical ethics.
It's about biology.
It's about understanding and proactively managing objective biological transactions. Every single interaction, big or small, is a withdrawal or a deposit. It's shifting the chemical balance in others and inevitably in yourself.
And the most powerful insight, maybe the most liberating one, is how reciprocal this whole system is. The ultimate measure of your own biological success, your effectiveness, is really your ability to be a net depositor of Thrive chemistry into the systems of the people around you.
Because it comes back. High-trust companies, thriving communities, they don't just feel better. They are measurably more productive, more innovative, more resilient. They're biologically engineered for that win-win state.
Creating environments where people are less stressed, more engaged, more creative, and as we saw, that higher productivity even justifies paying them 10, 11% more. Being good, in this biological sense, isn't just nice, it's simply superior engineering for collective success.